gather round, we've got a story to share. Richie and John, they always care, championing voices fierce and strong. Tune in, turn up, you can't go wrong. Life and love, they're here to fight. It's Newsday Tuesday, let's take a stand. With Richie and John, let's shake the land. Voices of truth in every sound. In this podcast world, our hope is found.
The Mutual Broadcasting System presents Richie and John, the podcast that connects you with the people, events, headlines, and lifestyle interests of the global LGBTQ+ community. Here's Richie Roy and John McMullen.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Richie and John. It is Newsday Tuesday, and I'm here, of course, with my co-host, John McMullen. John, how are you doing today?
I'm quite fine, Mr. Partner in Crime. How are you?
Not bad. Starting off the week, the weather has been stunningly beautiful here in the Hudson Valley the past couple days. It's been
nice,
unseasonably warm and sunny, and the leaves are changing color, so it's kind of a beautiful time to be up in these parts.
I know that you have a day job that is sitting right alongside a beautiful river bank, and it must be incredible right now to see those leaves change on all those trees that surround that place.
It's stunning. It's really, really pretty. Yep.
Yeah, that's great. Well, there's a lot of stuff going on in the news, and we've got 5 big stories to get to today. Let's start off in Texas, because it's one of our favorite states to pick on, where Attorney General Ken Paxton is suing a medical provider in a first-of-its-kind case. And he alleges that violation of the state's ban on gender-affirming care for minors has happened. Paxton targeted Dr. May C. Lau from Children's Hospital in Dallas, accusing her of prescribing hormone therapy to at least 21 minors from October of 2023 of last August. The lawsuit is claiming, quote, Lau used false diagnoses and billing codes to mask these unlawful prescriptions, and if successful, Lau risks losing her medical license. Paxton's lawsuit labels gender-affirming care as, quote, dangerous and experimental medical procedures, end quote, and asserts that there's no supporting scientific evidence, a claim disputed by major medical associations. These organizations affirm such care is safe and essential for treating gender dysphoria. The Texas Supreme Court upheld the state ban, but the DOJ challenges similar bans elsewhere, emphasizing that these laws harm transgender adolescents by denying necessary treatments. The broader legal battle will reach the United States Supreme Court soon, with a decision anticipated by mid-2025. And if we don't get the right people in office to deal with some problems at the Supreme Court, I can only imagine how much worse this is going to get.
Yeah, I think that's right. This story, it brings up, it has everything, right? It has Ken Paxton, America's favorite melted candle of a human. It has politicians intervening in the medical decisions made by doctors who actually know what they're doing. And it brings up, of course, something that's being teed up for the Supreme Court, and given the current makeup of the Supreme Court, is likely to be a decision that is not in our favor. This is just the thing that's irritating is that this state ban on gender-affirming care, it puts doctors in this impossible position, because if all the medical literature tells you the correct, proper, and good thing to do as a medical treater of things is to prescribe a medication, but you're not allowed to prescribe a medication, it leaves you in a bad position. What are you supposed to do as a doctor? Just say, well, sorry, you're just going to have to suffer because I can't prescribe you the medication I know is what you need.
Right.
For purely political reasons, it's monstrous.
Yeah, why can't we leave the medical services, the healthcare, to the healthcare professionals, and keep the politicians the hell out of the hospitals and doctors' offices, because they certainly don't belong there. They can't seem to fix other problems that affect health as well, like the health of children who get shot up in schools.
Yeah, the DOJ challenging these bans elsewhere is a great move, and I'm glad that we have a DOJ that is taking these steps. But it's going to, right now, we just have this terrible, terrible patchwork quilt where we have these red states passing these terrible laws, and even trying to, I know that we've reported in the past that, Ken Paxton is doing things like trying to get a hold of records of medical providers out of state to see if, parents were trying to get care for their transgender, children out of state, and trying to go after, out of state providers and all these sort of really invasive things that they're trying to do. And so it leaves everyone in an unenviable position. I have to say, and we've talked about it before, there's the tension of wanting to stay and fight, but at the same time, also, like, do you just try to leave? I mean, if you had a transgender child, would you up and leave the state of Texas because your kid is going to be immiserated for living there?
I understand the dilemma, but I think in some of these situations where it could be a matter of life or death, you almost have to. I mean, there's a piece of me that says, stay and fight. If everybody just leaves, then there's not going to be any hope in that place ever. But at the same time, when it's your loved one whose life is on the line and you risk losing them, that's a humongous sacrifice to make.
Yeah. It would be a big, and for people, a big life change. But, people are making these decisions. We've talked before about the single remaining pediatric, cardiologist in I believe it was either Texas or Louisiana, left the state because of anti-LGBTQ legislation.
Right. Yeah, it was in Louisiana.
And we see this brain drain, of and just of people who have had enough. They just, at some point, they're like, the writing is on the wall. This is not a safe and welcoming and hospitable place for me and my family to live anymore. And that's very depressing.
Yeah. Well, we need to get the United States of America back on track and progressing into the future, not going back to whatever that mess was that we had prior to, 1960s in this country. And I feel like my entire life has been washed away by this handful of morons that have this controlling grip on the United States of America right now. And we need to do something about it. And we have a huge chance to do that here in a couple of weeks.
We do. And, the sort of the opposite of Ken Paxton is another story we have here, which is the story of Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, who is on the ticket for vice president, who went on a podcast recently and defended transgender rights, which is awesome. This is on the podcast called We Can Do Hard Things. And Walz was speaking with co-host Abby Wambach. She acknowledged Walz's early advocacy, saying, thanking Governor Walz for protecting queer kids even in the late 90s when it was not the norm or the easy thing to do. And she asked about what a Harris-Walz administration would do to protect queer youth. Walz responded by outlining potential measures, including things like appointing judges who uphold the right to marriage, to be who you are, and to receive necessary medical care.
Yeah.
He emphasized
2 thumbs up to our friend, Governor, and soon-to-be Vice President Tim Walz.
Yeah, no, exactly. And he also emphasized the importance of opposing hate crimes and increasing education. Walz also, took aim at anti-trans ads by Donald Trump, stating that the hate has shifted to the trans community. Trump's closing arguments demonize people for being who they are, which is a great summation of exactly what this kind of end game, depressing, dark-hearted, dark-spirited, end game of the Trump campaign, where they have nothing to run on except complete animus and hatred. And, I think that it's really nice to have Walz on the ticket. Harris and Walz both have a strong track record with the LGBTQ community, and it would be, I think, a great administration for trying to really ensconce protections for the LGBTQ community and push them further. The DOJ right now is, as we said in the previous article, is going after states that are trying these gender-affirming care bans. But, I'd love to see legislation that specifically ensconces in law that there is a right to gender-affirming medical care, and do away with all this piece-by-piece, state-by-state nonsense.
Remember the good old days when being a Republican meant that you wanted to keep the government out of your life, out of your home, out of your pocket?
Well, I feel like that was definitely a platform. I think there was always an asterisk to it, which is stay out of my pocket, stay out of my business. But, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. We're going to be in your pocket. We're going to be in your bedroom. We're going to be up in your business 24/7.
Yeah, the
And that's
last
what
time
they're
that
doing.
something really good and positive happened at the hands of a Republican was when Abe decided that it was time to, get real about those people with darker skin and not make them work for us for free.
Right. Yeah. And there are a lot of times the Republican Party, they go back to we're the party of Lincoln. Well, is that the best?
No, you're not.
That's, I mean, first of all, you're not, but
That's such a
you have to
lie.
go that far back to find something decent that you've done,
Right.
like as a party.
Yeah. And how many Republicans have been elected since him?
Right. And Republicans, surrogates for the Trump, campaign are out there, saying crazy things like, that they'd roll back Brown versus Board of Education or, like all these insane things. So, yeah, the idea that the Republican Party is somehow this small government, light touch business, I don't think was ever truly the case, but it's certainly not the case now.
Here's the deal, Richie. I think that they have done a really good job of selling the American people on that ideal, even though it's nothing but a bunch of capital BS. But that's why I think so many people actually support them, because they think that that's really what's happening and what the agenda is and what their reality is, when that's as far away as Earth 2, where most of these people apparently came from.
Yeah, and people hear what they want to believe. People truly, I think, on the right are just conditioned to think, at least some people on the right, they hear some cockamamie story like Kamala's going to take away your stove, just crazy, just lunacy stuff. And then they'll trumpet that out there on Facebook and on Twitter and get all riled up about nonsense because there's this wingnut conspiratorial bent to conservative America. And they really do have this idea that if Democrats are in power, that the black helicopters are headed straight to their homes to take their stove away. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Well, since you brought it up, I do need to move on to our next story, which is from Lancaster, Ohio, where a conservative group's boycott effort against LGBTQ-friendly businesses has reportedly boosted those establishments instead, after Fairfield County conservatives circulated a list of businesses supporting local LGBTQ plus groups, specifically the group the Rainbow Alliance. Business owners like Brandon Love noticed increased patronage. Love commented, quote, "We've had at least 200 new visitors supporting boycotted businesses," end quote. Customers are even coming from Columbus and out of the state to lend support. That's nice to hear. Teresa Speakman, owner of Mud Gallery, also observed rising support, sharing, quote, "People thank me for my rainbow flag and being a safe space." In response, Love created his own list promoting the targeted businesses, which Speakman says, quote, "turned the boycott around." Meanwhile, Fairfield County conservatives continue pressing the Lancaster City Council for a ban on what they call adult cabaret performances, focusing once again on drag shows. Lancaster City Law Director Stephanie Hall insists that these performances, quote, "did not break any laws." Of course they didn't. Once again, drag queens being drug over the coals and targeted because they seem maybe outrageous to some, but loved by most in reality.
Yeah, exactly. This is a great story because we talk a lot on here about boycotts from the right that do work. Yeah. And they're very enraging. We talk almost constantly about Robbie Starbuck and his efforts to dismantle DEI and LGBTQ efforts at major corporations. But it's nice to see here that it backfired in a big way, in Lancaster, Ohio. And, this.
By the way, can I just say for a moment, how sweet has it been that we haven't had to hear about another business succumbing to him in the last 2 weeks?
I know.
I felt like it was one or two a week there for a while.
Yeah. Hopefully, I mean, I don't think we've seen the last of this Robbie Starbuck, but hopefully it's, we don't hear about anything soon.
I don't either. However, I do think that the timing is such that with the election coming up in just a couple of weeks, I think that we're not going to hear as much about it because it's not going to be the type of thing to grab headlines as it was going into an election and being, a year where that kind of stuff makes a difference at the polls or in influencing people to get out and vote or not vote.
Yeah. It would be interesting to see what kind of corporate responses are if if we go into a Harris Walz presidency, because we've had a Democratic administration for 4 years and this pushback is working, but if there's a groundswell of support for the Harris Walz ticket, if they really ride in on a blue wave and we see Senate and House seats also kind of going in that direction, if corporate America might change their tune once again and kind of be a little more receptive, even in the face of these conservative, boycotts, because they see that maybe it makes business sense to do what they used to do and that they aren't doing now.
Hey, what would it do, or what would it take for you to, say, give up your position at the college as a lawyer and come with me to Washington in the next administration, and for us to be the co-czars of the Office of Public Liaison to the LGBTQ community and do what it is that should have been done for the last, I don't know, dozen years at least.
Whining and dining LGBTQ groups in society fashion, that doesn't sound terrible.
I'm thinking more about it from the standpoint of terrorizing CEOs who think that they can succumb to little brats like Robbie Starbuck.
Yeah, I mean that too. I mean, I do think that regardless of who is picked, I think you're right that we really need to advocate for that position to be brought back in the next administration if it is Harris Walz, because it just gives that official stamp of approval. There is weight behind the words.
Yeah. Well, see, and I think that you and I would be the perfect pair to do this job together because we've been advocating for it from the word go on all of these situations that have been going on, but also because, as was displayed just here a moment ago in my asking that question, you and I are really a good cop, bad cop team.
Exactly. Yep. I think that would work. I'm here for it.
You know what? I personally have nothing against the people of Russia, but their leadership, little different story. And it's one of those places where I honestly think whatever my maker is, who that is, or whatever, for not letting me be born into a land that thumps its LGBTQ citizens. And that's what's going on once again over in Moscow. What's going on there?
Yeah, so in Moscow, police raided 2 gay clubs, detaining over 50 people, marking a continued crackdown on the LGBTQ community. This was reported by Novaya Gazeta Europe. And so there's footage from raids on October 12th that appeared on pro-Russia Telegram channels. It showed masked officers storming Central Station, shouting at patrons and making them lie on the ground. An officer is seen violently kicking a detainee's leg. So Central Station held an event for National Coming Out Day, which is when the police entered around 1 a.m. under the guise of combating drug trafficking. Roughly 200 people were present, and it's unclear where the detainees were taken. The police also raided another LGBTQ plus venue called Three Monkeys. And the raids supposedly responded to civilian complaints about drag performances mocking Russia's Ukraine invasion. I believe that, sure. The LGBTQ community in Russia faces continued persecution, with Novaya Gazeta noting multiple citywide raids since Russia's Supreme Court deemed the, quote, international LGBT social movement an extremist organization last year.
Whatever.
I know. I remember when that happened, and I just thought the international LGBT social movement is that it is ludicrous to call a social movement an organization. I mean, it goes back to that idea that there's some kind of like, gay cabal that meets, and has, official leadership and has, a fancy townhouse, in Manhattan where the decisions are made, for the social movement.
Right.
It's essentially criminalizing a concept, that concept being queerness and gayness. And so what that does is gives cover for things like this, for raids to just go in under false pretenses and arrest gay people for being gay.
Go figure.
So it's really troubling, and it also is a reminder too of why our election is important, because while people say, oh, that's Russia, we would look if there's another Trump administration, if the Supreme Court continues its sort of march through precedent and just ripping up precedent left and right, there's a good chance that there are states in this country where raids on gay bars could happen again.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
within short order, especially places that are already places that would love to do it anyway. The Floridas, the Texases, the Alabamas,
Tennessee.
they would love nothing more. There are localities in those states that would love nothing more than to raid and shut down gay bars for being gay bars or clubs. And, with just a couple decisions at the Supreme Court, that could change.
Yeah. And the fact that our former president, who is trying to run for not going to prison again,
Yeah.
that he takes his orders from the Kremlin, or at least advice, when he's not busy sending them boxes with COVID test kits that never went to American people.
Mm-hmm.
It's all a big sham. Meanwhile, in a country run by a woman who is the female version of her beloved Mussolini, in Italy, the government criminalizes international surrogacy, and it sparks concerns among LGBTQ activists and legal experts about its impact on same-sex families. The new law imposes criminal penalties on Italians using surrogacy abroad, even where it's legal, such as in the United States. LGBTQ activist Yuri Guayana says, quote, "This law feels like a joke, a very sad joke." Already banned domestically, Italy's new law classifies international surrogacy as a universal crime with penalties up to 2 years in jail and $1.1 million in fines. What in the fuck?
That's
Dude.
insane.
During a parliamentary debate, Senator Lavinia Menonuni stated, quote, "Motherhood is absolutely unique. It absolutely cannot be surrogated." I guess 90% of Italians seeking surrogates are straight. Advocates fear that the law targets gay couples, and Archigays Roberto Muzzetta warns of a potential witch hunt, alleging unethical scrutiny of gay versus straight parents returning with children. Legal experts like Ryan Thorson highlighted potential human rights challenges, noting that Italy's recent legal moves against LGBTQ parental rights under Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. LGBTQ activists vow to oppose the law. And as I mentioned to start with, she's a bitch and a crazy person. She is the Italian Trump.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this goes to this creeping incursion on people's private lives. This is obviously not in the U.S., but to go from a country where it was already banned domestically, but to apply it extraterritorially. So even if you go to somewhere that it's legal, on coming back to the country, you're facing jail time and huge fines for having the audacity to want a child. That's the thing that's crazy here is these right-wing nuts always talk about how they're pro-family. Well, what's pro-family here? I mean, these are people who want families, and they might be thrown in jail for wanting that. And, one of the things that the article that I read brought up is that while 90% of the Italians seeking surrogates are straight, gay couples are easier to target because they can't just get knocked up. They require things like surrogates, or they require additional support in order to start their families. And
Well,
so,
in some cases, yes. I mean, in others, you can just hold your nose and
well, but in most instances, it's going to, involve a surrogacy situation. And I just think that this highlights again why policy matters, why these kind of these right-wing encroachment on rights, it never ends. I'm sure that there were certain people that say, well, in Italy said before, well, it's banned domestically, but you can just go elsewhere. You can just go elsewhere and do it, no big deal. And then now it is now illegal. Same thing again with in this country, like gender affirming care for minors, where you could say, oh, well, it's okay in Texas, you can do telemedicine to Seattle. Except Ken Paxton is trying to get all the records and go after providers in other states and to target parents, for, quote, harming their children by seeking to get them gender affirming health care in places where they can't.
Wasn't Paxton supposed to have been impeached like a year or two ago?
Oh, no. I mean, that would be great.
I think the whole legislature tried to throw him out, but something got in the way.
Well, that's a bummer. But yeah, so, again, this is just highlighting that,
it makes me wonder, though, I mean, because it could be really dangerous to have a couple come over here and do all that they need to do in the U.S. or somewhere else that is a place where it's legal to have that kind of surrogacy. And you get back home and then the child ends up in a situation where they might be worse off once they are on foreign soil because you have no repercussion or, no repercussions to get them back. And if everything goes wrong or awry because of the government there, I mean, and they take the child away from those parents, I mean, God only knows. It really is a scary situation. I have friends who adopted children out of China back in, the late 1990s. And I can't even imagine the stuff that they went through trying to get those kids safely back into their arms here in the US of A, because there were always all sorts of threats towards especially lesbian couples that were trying to do these adoptions. So it could really screw things up for a lot of people for a long time. But
yeah, it's true. And when people say, surrogacy is just an option, there's always adoption, except in many places, the adoptions are, and this is something that there are court cases that come up about this, are oftentimes run through Christian and Catholic organizations that make it difficult or impossible for same-sex couples to adopt.
Right.
And so the idea of that there are other ways to start a family if you are a same-sex couple is not necessarily the case. And I don't know what the story is in Italy, if it's similarly difficult, but here it's not a walk in the park no matter how you slice it.
Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to slice this show here in just a moment, and we're going to get on with the week, and we'll be back with another edition of Richie and John this coming weekend on Saturday. We'll have another episode for you with some interesting lifestyle related content, and I'm not going to tell you what it is because honestly, and I'm being 100% truthful with you, I don't know what it's going to be because we have a couple of interesting calls out to some people, and we're waiting to see who we end up getting booked for the program before we announce that. But if you'd like to be in touch with us, you can give us a call at area code 878-768-8825. That's 878-768-8825. You can also send us an email, info@richieandjohn.com. That's RICHIEANDJOHN.com, info@richieandjohn.com. You can also use the feedback form on our homepage at richieandjohn.com. And we would love to hear from you. You can comment on any of the stories or topics that we've talked about on this or prior programs, or things that you'd like to hear us talking about. Or you can ask us, are you guys crazy? Why didn't you think this or do that or say this? So whatever you'd like to respond with, we'd like to hear from you. We'd like to know that there are people out there who care enough about spending a half an hour with us in this format a couple of times a week. And so if you want to do that, we would be grateful. We'd also be grateful for your vote as we're getting close to voting day. We would love to have you go to whatever podcast service that you listen to us on and rate us if you would. We love 5 stars, but if you feel like we're worthy of less, well, go ahead. Just be honest, and we will look forward to catching up with you again soon. Richie and I are looking forward to catching up in the same place, same time zone again here in the next couple of weeks. We're going to have a big gathering around Greater Palm Springs Pride, and that's going to be a lot of fun. That happens always the first weekend in November of each year, and we'll have a hell of a good crowd here this year celebrating with us. So that will certainly be a lot of fun, and we'll have some pictures and video and other stuff to share with you, even some pictures of Richie and I and our new Richie and John ugly Christmas sweaters.
Exactly. It'll be a good time. Until then, have a great week, everyone, and we will talk to you again on Saturday.
Arrivederci.